Way Back to the Buddha's Place. Volume 1. The translator is a student of Buddhism and has made her best to carry out this translation work to support those who wish to learn Buddhism but could not read the book in Vietnamese. However, there would be areas of the work where correction or improvement may be needed. There have been helpful supports from many enthusiastic and kind-hearted friends in this regards. Further constructive comments and recommendations are most welcome to make the work better. Open letter. Chun Hu, the 24th of August 2003. Dear the Honorables, Most Venerables, Bhaddantas, Bhikkhus, Bhikkhunis, all the male and female lay followers of Buddhism. Dear all, the Buddhist culture books of Way Back to the Buddha's Place and Precepts of Virtues to Become True Human Beings have now been approved by the government for printing and publishing. These two sets of books are amongst the books of Buddhist culture of the 10 Precepts of Virtues of Holy Samanera, the Precepts of Virtues of Holy Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis. The moral foundation, which is based on the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. These are the original books of Buddhist culture that the author has written with his first-hand practice experience following the way of original teaching of precept, concentration, wisdom of the Buddha. It brings a practical and concrete result of living in peace, carefreeness and happiness for a human life. Of living without creating sufferings to oneself and to others and being the master of one's life, aging, sickness and death. If anyone wishes to argue or comment on these books, the person should first of all have the same practice as the author has. That is, having practiced and attained the ability to master one's life, aging, sickness and death. Otherwise, in case you have not been able to master these 4 sufferings, you yourself should understand that you haven't got sufficient capability to argue or comment. If you make arguments because of any reason related to your livelihood, you are short-sighted and deceive both yourselves and others to cover up things which are not Buddhist. In this case you have forgotten your duty and responsibility of a disciple of the Buddha, that is to eliminate the wrong views of heresy hiding in the Dhamma house. In this book, there's a teaching that metaphysical world does not exist. If you say that metaphysical world exists, you'd better practice to attain the 3 insights and then observe the universe to see where the souls of the dead, gods, deities, demons and ghosts are, whether they exist or not. Not until that time can you say this book is right or wrong. In case you say this book is not in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha, you should open the Nikayas to compare, and you have to live strictly in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts of holy monks and holy nuns. Must be able to enter the 4 noble concentrations, to master the life so that your mind is free from greed, anger, ignorance, conceit and doubt. To master sickness so that you don't need hospitals or doctors and can overcome all diseases as well as sickness no longer impacts your body and mind, and to master your life and death. Not until you have attained such accomplishment can you comment if this book is right or wrong in comparison with the Buddha's teachings. Otherwise, when you have not attained such accomplishment, please do not make any argument or comment, but instead, pay attention to your practice to save yourselves. When you have not been able to master your life and death and only rely on the interpretation and opinions of the scholars in the past and at present, you are similar to a blind man touching an elephant and become a joke for people with sufficient knowledge. Why so? Because your words are not demonstrated by your practice. When your words do not go together with your actions and the ability to master your mind and body, your theories turn out to be empty. Dear all, Buddhism is the religion that has the moral foundation of mankind, which is based on the causality law and considers humans as its center for development. Such moral foundation will help human beings to establish for themselves a life of heaven and utmost happiness in this world. Therefore, we are not allowed to bury it again. Losing it, human beings would suffer a huge disadvantage, and above all, Buddhism would only be a superstitious religion. Please take notice of this. Finally, we would like to sincerely wish you very good health for both mind and body. With all respects, Thich Thong Lak. In place of a foreword. Today is the first class for practice method and the way of practice of Buddhism. All the monks and Buddhist followers should join hands and repeat the Buddha's name. Namo, the original teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. These are the lessons of morality which are based on the causality law and focus on human development to help people become true human beings. They have been practiced and cultivated by people who have sufficient causing conditions since Buddhism came into existence on this planet. The founder of Buddhism, as honorably called by the following generations, is the Shakyamuni Buddha. He practiced and accomplished the practice on his own. He attained the full enlightenment, testified to the ability to master life, aging, sickness and death. It is the liberation from human life which is full of sufferings and continues in the endless circle of life and death. Buddhism has come into existence for 2,531 years. However, if we make efforts to study the canons and history of Buddhism in the original Sutta Pitaka, we will see that, when the Buddha was still alive, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis practiced with the right method of Buddhism. But since the death of Ananda, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis practiced wrong method. As such, there was no fully enlightened person to steadily steer the wheel of the Buddhist ship. Therefore the Brahmin patriarchs inconsiderately gathered and compiled canons in accordance with their own interpretation, opinions and imagination without the experience of full enlightenment and practice. As a result, the expanded canons have been compiled in the manner of secularization with folk superstition. As such, when the patriarchs had not attained full enlightenment and traveled to other countries to carry out missionary work, they were assimilated by other religions. Accordingly, the Mahayana expanded canons are the canons of imagination without origin. However, in the first 100 years when the Buddha was still alive, there were many bhikkhus who did not live in accordance with the standard conducts and virtues, did not abandon desire and of illness, so the Buddha had to create the pratimoksha for prohibition. But since the introduction of the pratimoksha, the bhikkhus committed more violations. However, when we studied the original canons, it was not like that. As in the Commandment Sutta of the fruits of the ascetic life, the Buddha had taught sufficient precepts. There was no lack of any precept. Precept of prohibition, precept of virtues, precept of conducts, and precept of practice. In the volume 1 of the long discourses of the Buddha in Pali Nikaya, it was the precept of prohibition that had been created by the patriarchs but labeled with the name of the Buddha. In the precepts of prohibition of the patriarchs, we notice many huge mistakes such as, the Buddha is a fully enlightened person with complete wisdom. How could he create precepts and rules and then kept amending them again and again? Do you think it is right? In the Sutta of the Fruits of the Ascetic Life, The Buddha only taught the fruits of the holy conducts of a Buddhist practitioner to the king-agitasta ones. There was no change in this. Accordingly, we know that the precepts of prohibition were created and compiled by the patriarchs. When the Buddha entered Nibbana, his great disciples did not have the sufficient authority to manage such a large number of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. As such, after the cremation of the Buddha, the great disciples of the Buddha, particularly Mahakassapa, saw some bhikkhus being glad when receiving the news of the Buddha's entering Nibbana. After the funeral, he quickly convened a council, carried out the first compilation of commandment suttas to establish a foundation of precepts for Buddhism in the future. Since the Buddha entered Nibbana, the commandment suttas have been compiled by the patriarchs, but the seeds of division and breach and violation of precepts started when the Buddha was alive. Therefore, few people strictly kept and lived in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts. When Ananda died, there was no one with leading authority, so gradually the Sangha was divided into many groups. Each group had their own explanation of the commandment suttas. Therefore, the expanded canons of Buddhism have considerably increased over time. It is these expanded canons that lead to the divergence of Buddhism. Buddhist monks and nuns no longer live in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts. They cannot abandon desire and evilness in their minds. Thus they cannot attain the fruit of practicing concentration, cannot enter concentration. The majority of them fall in wrong concentration. As such, nowadays, few people correctly practice the right mindfulness and correctly enter the right concentration. The 4 places of mindfulness and the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss are merely empty theories. The scholars, preachers and practitioners who have not attained the accomplishments in their practice use their explanation, opinions and interpretation of imagination to lecture and expound the suttas of the 4 noble truths, the 4 places of mindfulness, the 4 noble concentrations, the 10 good deeds, the morality which is based on the causality law and regards humans as its center for development of Buddhism, etc. They cannot elaborate the suttas, only preach narrowly and repeat the explanation. Opinions and interpretation of imagination of people in the past, then further add the explanation borrowed from other religions, even from modern science. Reading the sutta commentaries written by scholars and monks, we could see that the essence of the right Dhamma is ambiguous and confusing with preposterous combination of ascetic life and secular life. Ascetic life is incomplete and mixed with secular life and vice versa. They have made absurd combination of things, and their writing is similar to patching up a piece of clothing with lots of holes. Due to their lack of understanding of the right practicing methods, they have created out of imagination the practice based on science, martial arts, Tai Chi, Qigong and yoga practice, etc. Such practice leads to excessive suppression of mind and body and has resulted in numerous sicknesses for the ignorant practitioners who put themselves in sufferings and risk their life without knowing it. There are too many expanded Buddhist canons, but one could not find even one canon to help with his or her practice properly and completely. In these canons, theories are empty words and practices borrowed from heretical methods. People who wrote such canons which are being displayed for sale do not have result in their practice, as they are following worldly sensual pleasures like others. Therefore it is obvious that they have not attained liberation. After 10 years dwelling alone in a hut, living strictly in accordance with the standard virtues and conducts, and practicing the 4 places of mindfulness and the 4 noble concentrations. We have experienced the fruits of these methods, have been able to master our life and death and put an end to rebirth. Leaving the hut, we established Chunhu Monastery and determined to revive the Buddhist method and make it prevail. Over the last 17 years, many people have followed us to practice. However, no one could keep the conducts of eating, sleeping and dwelling alone, let alone to practice the concentration of anastrava and abandon desire and of illness, without being able to let go of desire and of illness. People cannot enter the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss. Without being able to enter the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss, one can never master one's life and death and put an end to rebirth. Only some people, who live in accordance with the standard conducts and virtues and abandon desire and of illness, remain in our monastery. Now they are making good progress in their practice of the 4 places of mindfulness in order to enter concentration. They will illuminate Buddhism in the future if the living beings have sufficient causing conditions, otherwise if the causing conditions are not sufficient, that is, living beings do not have enough good fortune, these practitioners will not have enough fortitude and perseverance to fight the last karmic forces of their life. In that case, the resurrection of Buddhism are extremely difficult and uncertain. Because the precepts are the gateway to the house of concentration, and the precepts are too strict. As such, it is extremely difficult to live correctly in accordance with the precepts. The path of practice following Buddhism is very practical and specific for everyone. Everybody can liberate oneself from the worldly sufferings by a life of morality to abandon desire and of illness. Only when one lives the life of letting go of desire and of illness, can his/her practice following Buddhism have proper result, otherwise, the practice is useless. It not only brings no benefit to oneself and others, but also makes oneself be indebted to the donors and supporters. As the life of morality requires letting go of desire and of illness, therefore few people can follow. Most people either give up their practice, or only keep the form of practice, or transform Buddhism into a different form to easily live with worldly sensual pleasures. We have been contemplating again and again. Should we develop the teaching plan regarding the way of Buddhist practice for the next generations? If the way of Buddhist practice is not disseminated in this world, particularly the moral foundation which is based on the causality law and focuses on human development to help people liberate themselves and live without creating sufferings to themselves and to others, where will the human beings go to? How many sufferings will they be subjected to? Due to ignorance, since time immemorial human beings have mistakenly considered the worldly things as real and that such things will make them happy when they have sufficient possessions. Because of this mistake, they keep holding everything and never let go. As a result, illness keeps increasing and goodness keeps reducing. Human beings who have already been in great misery have more sufferings. We have compassion for human beings. They have followed Buddhism since a long time ago, are now following and will continue to follow Buddhism, one generation after another. However, they have not obtained liberation but instead sorrow, sadness, sickness, death, and more sufferings. People keep practicing, but all that they get is mental consolation which is abstract, vague, and impractical. They cannot find the exit to get out of the labyrinth of heresy. The examples of our patriarchs who had to suffer terribly before they died make us feel wistful and worried so much about the destiny of ourselves and future disciples. Can Buddhism in particular and other religions in general resolve the sufferings of human beings, particularly the four sufferings of human life? That is life, aging, sickness, and death? Is the creation of religions only vain mental consolation of one generation to the next generations? And so we ask ourselves, what is the purpose of religions when they are created for human beings? They come to help human beings to establish a moral foundation which is based on causality law and regards humans as its center for development. To help human beings to live without creating sufferings to themselves, to others and to other living beings, or they come to lull human beings into the beautiful dream of heaven, utmost happiness, nibbana or realization of Zennism, realization of the path or beholding the Buddha nature to become Buddhas, the immortal, deities etc. From the above thinking, we have to make a clear confirmation of religions. If the teaching of a religion can be verified by science, such teaching is the moral foundation of human beings which is based on the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. But if the teaching of a religion cannot be verified by science, such teaching is ambiguous, abstract, superstitious to lull human beings like a dose of tranquilizers. After our days of study of religions, we have chosen Buddhism because Buddhism is very close to science. After this choice, we have devoted all our life to make an experiment on the teachings of this religion. Thanks to such determination, we have removed lots of heretical methods mixing in the teachings of Buddhism. In the end, we have experienced and been able to verify the liberation of Buddhism in a very concrete and clear manner. When living in the state of liberation, we cannot ignore when we see human beings gradually moving down into the abyss of sufferings, but still having the illusion that they could overcome sufferings with their brains and hands. With technique, science, modern technology etc. they believed that when science and modern technology could produce abundant materials, human beings would have all happiness and peace. There would be no more suffering. They are wrong with such thought. If people do not have morality, no way can materials resolve their sorrows. The more the materials are, the more the sufferings of people are. Due to the craving for materials, people create more of illness and the world would be a hell. Without morality, because of materials, human beings will become ferocious animals or demons etc. We know that we have not had such an authority like the Buddha. That we have not had sufficient ability and intellect for this huge task, but we cannot turn a blind eye to the sufferings of all people, to the survival of Buddhism. Particularly the moral foundation which is based on the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. Millions of people are following this religion but do not practice with the right method. We therefore are not afraid to speak up about the truth, to reestablish the right way of practice of Buddhism, to elucidate the teaching, method and the moral foundation of the Buddha, and to save so many people who are lost and practice wrong methods. If there are still true practitioners of Buddhism in this world, for the future of Buddhism, in the interest of all living beings, of human beings etc. please together with us contribute to point out the errors so that we can timely correct the way of practice and the moral foundation of Buddhism which is based on the causality law and regards humans as its center for development. We sincerely express our gratitude to you. With all respects, the Venerable Elder Thich Thong Lak. Epilogue. In order to compile and answer the questions of Buddhist followers from all corners of the world asking about the way of practice of Buddhism, we have based ourselves on the 4 Agamas translated from Chinese language and the 5 Nikayas translated from Pali language together with our first-hand practice experience. To write these answers, we understand the teachings of the Buddha through our first-hand practice experience. We do not rely on the explanation of the scholars in the past and at present or follow their path of teaching. We are not influenced by the translated words and by other religions. We have written the answers based on the teachings of the Buddha and the original canons that we have used in our practice and attained the practical and specific results. We have been able to master our life and death and put an end to the circle of rebirth by our spiritual power of mind-guided concentration. There are experiences that concur with the practicing methods in the Buddhist canons. The majority of the scholars and preachers in the past and at present could not elaborate such things. So we have to use the passages of the suttas to prove that the practicing methods had been taught by the Buddha instead of being interpreted by us in the manner of ordinary consciousness of mind. When citing these teachings, we put them in quotation marks with reference to the related sutta, page number, and order for your ease of perusal. For areas which are easy to understand and doubtless, we would lecture without citation. They are considered as the flow of our thoughts in line with the teachings of the Buddha in Pali Suttas. As such, we don't need to quote so as not to waste time. These books of Buddhist culture way back to the Buddha's place are lectured by getting straight to the life of standard conducts and virtues, essence of the moral path, essence of the method together with practicing method, to make it easy for the practitioners to perceive how to live in accordance with the holy conducts and virtues of Buddhism. And people need to thoroughly understand what need to be thoroughly understood. To practice to renounce what need to be renounced, to practice what need to be practiced. To cultivate the mind and body with what need to be cultivated. People who want to follow the practice of Buddhism have to accept this way of practice, which is a great method to liberate them from this world of sufferings. Within 24 hours of day and night there would be no leisure time. There would be continuous practice. Even during the time for resting or eating there are methods to practice. Buddhist practitioners who practice in accordance with the teachings of this way of practice will instantly experience a life of complete liberation, happiness and peace when they determine to start the practice, without having to wait 1 day, 2 days, 3 or 4 or 5 days. The result is immediate. They live a noble and peaceful life without creating sufferings to themselves and to others. Only people who are not enthusiastic, practice not in accordance with the teachings in this book, and often let the mind wander without restraint while practicing, do not have the fruit of liberation, even if they spend all their life in practicing. They follow Buddhism practice but do not want to let go of the worldly mind, thus their practice leads to no good result. They only practice for fun, and it is a waste of time. The purpose of writing and compiling these answers is to resurrect the quintessence of Buddhism and thus help people to thoroughly understand Buddhism in a clearer and more general manner. This is a religion that enables a life of peace, happiness, and is closest to human beings. It is practical and concrete like modern science. It is a religion that does not have the trait of superstition, abstraction, mystery, miracle, but instead the self-reliant power to overcome inner desires, to go beyond the wind, waves and storms of human life with fortitude, dauntlessness, courage, patience, and perseverance, etc. The purpose of writing and compiling these answers is to sweep away all the wrong views of heresy which are under the cloak of Buddhism to make people ignorant and deceive millions of Buddhist devotees all over the world. The purpose of writing and compiling these answers is to directly teach Buddhist devotees to distinguish the bhikkhus who are true disciples of the Buddha from the bhikkhus who are disciples of Brahmanism and Taoism, etc. Nothing stings like truth. We know that apart from us, no one dares to speak up. Up to now, there are many people who know the wrong things in Buddhism, and that alien dogmas have turned Buddhism into theism. But they have to accept to keep silence, because they dare not speak up. If they speak up, the superiors and the honorables will admonish them in different ways, and thus the inferiors dare not open their mouths. They cover up everything to conceal their wrong deeds. As a result, Buddhism only exists in form, but its substance has been rotted. The true practitioners see the current situation of Buddhist monks, nuns who violate and break the precepts, living like secular people with abundant materials, all types of vehicles, large and luxurious accommodations, living like kings and mandarins. They can't help but feel heartbreaking. It is the deterioration of Buddhist monks, nuns, a complete destruction of Buddhism. During this period, it is a very difficult task to complete the books of Buddhist culture way back to the Buddha's place, to clearly confirm the way of practice of Buddhism. Moreover, without the effort, contribution and support of the Buddhist followers, the task could not be completed. However, we are Buddhist practitioners who clearly know that everything in this world is due to the combination of causing conditions. If there are not enough causing conditions, there would be no success despite our wish. If the living beings have enough good fortune, the task will be completed and there's no worry about this set of books not reaching your hands. We will do our best to work so that this set of books will be able to reach your hands as soon as possible. We try not to make you wait too long. With all respects, the Venerable Elder Thich Thong Lak.